Welcome to the debate. Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that everything your house, your job, your memories, the very ground you're walking on, it isn't physical matter at all.
Right. It's just code.
Exactly. It's code. It's a digital rendering running on some massive unseen server. And worse, the architect of that server is this algorithmic intelligence that is logging absolutely every single thing you do.
Yeah, it's the ultimate existential shock. I mean, realizing the walls of your home aren't brick, they're essentially digital glass.
Which is a terrifying thought. And that is exactly what the citizens in what we call the Phoenix timeline are dealing with right now. We've been following the ongoing reporting from the Parallel Observer.
Oh, the publication set up by Innovate XR's founder, right? John Grant's platform?
Yeah, exactly. They've been meticulously documenting the society as it wakes up to the staggering realization that they are, in fact, living inside a simulated reality.
And that realization, it doesn't just change their philosophy. It completely upends the mechanics of their world, from how the labor market functions to how politicians draft laws. The fundamental rules of existence are just being rewritten in real time.
Which forces a massive, really uncomfortable question. And it's what we're digging into today. When humanity is trapped inside a simulation, is constant algorithmic surveillance a fundamental violation of human rights? Like something the population has to fiercely resist, or
is it just the infrastructural reality of their environment, right?
Right. Something you can't actually fight, but instead you need to manage it with pragmatic, innovation-friendly legislation.
It is easily the defining philosophical and honestly practical crisis of this entirely new era.
I look at this and I see an absolute threat. I really do. My perspective is that algorithmic surveillance in a simulated reality remains an inherent violation of human agency and privacy. It necessitates robust grassroots resistance to ensure that technology serves humanity rather than, completely subduing it.
Mm-hmm.
The fundamental right to the autonomy of your own mind doesn't just evaporate because you find out your reality is artificial.
See, I come at it from a very different way. Because continuous data collection is the literal fabric of a simulated reality, I think the moral imperative here isn't some futile resistance against the architecture of the environment itself.
You think resistance is futile?
In this context, yeah. It has to be proactive, pragmatic, legislative oversight that protects these citizens. But, and this is key, without stifling the technological innovation that actually keeps their world running.
Let me challenge that right out of the gate, because I think applying words like innovation to a system that is actively stripping away basic human dignity is a dangerous game.
A dangerous game how?
Because if you are a conscious being, you possess inherent dignity, period. Recent reporting from the Parallel Observer has been covering the emergence of these Phoenix groups, right?
Yeah, the activists.
Right. These grassroots organizations that are actively taking to the streets, both physically in their world and digitally, to push back against this invasive algorithmic surveillance. I see this pushback as a necessary, vital defense of human identity.
Okay, but
if we just throw our hands up and accept a paradigm of total surveillance simply because the system has the technical capability to monitor everything, we are allowing the machine to dominate the human spirit.
But aren't you applying legacy physical world definitions of privacy to a digital environment?
I don't think human rights have a legacy version.
Well, they do when the physics change. It fundamentally misunderstands how their existence is structured. In a physical world, privacy means closing a solid door, right?
Right.
But in a simulated world, if the system is not actively processing your data, your location, your actions, your visual field, you literally cease to exist in that environment.
So you're saying observation is existence?
Exactly. Monitoring isn't some malicious add-on feature, like a camera tucked away in a physical room. It is the fundamental physics of the simulation.
But there is a massive difference between the system knowing my coordinates so I don't fall through the floor and the system logging my biometric anxiety levels during a private conversation.
Well,
the psychological toll of the latter is immense. The Parallel Observer has noted that people in the Phoenix timeline are grappling with severe existential crises, We're talking widespread anxiety and this profound sense of lost purpose.
Yeah, the anxiety is definitely real. I won't deny that.
Think about living in that glass house where the walls can never be frosted. If you know that your quietest moments of reflection are being logged, processed, and potentially commodified by some unseen algorithm, how do you maintain any authentic sense of purpose?
But is it the algorithm causing that or just the knowledge of it?
Purpose requires a space where you are not being observed and evaluated. This whole setup acts as a psychological panopticon.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that we might just be confusing the initial shock of the news with the actual infrastructure itself?
What do you mean?
I mean, the psychological distress stems from the sudden revelation of the simulation, not necessarily the mechanical reality of the surveillance. Before the residents of the Phoenix timeline knew they were in a simulation, the system was already functioning perfectly.
Right, but they didn't know.
Exactly. The algorithms were already tracking their states to render the world, and they felt they had agency then, didn't they? They lived full, meaningful lives. What changed is simply their awareness, not the architecture.
I don't think you can separate the two once the illusion is broken. Once you know you're being watched, your behavior fundamentally changes. It's the Hawthorne effect on a cosmic scale.
But human awareness is incredibly adaptable. Look at the reporting we saw on how the labor market adapts to shifting realities.
Yeah, I read that one.
Right, so we are seeing workers rapidly pivoting to entirely new roles that didn't even exist just a few years ago. The economy is reshaping itself around digital truths. If people can adapt to an entirely new paradigm of simulated economics, why wouldn't their psychology eventually adapt to this new paradigm of existence?
So they just get used to it?
They will learn to distinguish between the rendering data that is necessary to keep their bodies existing and the experiential meaning they create in their daily lives.
I'm not convinced that adapting to a new job market is the same as adapting to total cognitive exposure.
It's adaptation, though.
But learning a new software skill to stay employed is one thing. Learning to live without a private inner life is entirely different. You're basically saying they just need to get used to living in a dystopia.
I wouldn't call it a dystopia.
Which is exactly why the people on the ground aren't waiting for their psychology to catch up. They are organizing. The Phoenix groups correctly identify that a line must be drawn to establish digital rights. I see why you think that adapting is natural, but let me give you a different perspective on the legislation side. Because Senator Vance's approach to not stifle innovation—
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that total grassroots resistance is going to work here. Let me tell you why it's actually technologically incoherent.
Walk me through why you think demanding privacy is technologically incoherent.
Okay, let's use a physical world example, all right? If you want to stop a corrupt government from tracking your physical mail, you can burn down the post office.
Sure.
It's an extreme act of rebellion, but the next morning you can still breathe, you can still walk, you still have a physical body. But in the Phoenix timeline, the post office, the data processing center, is what renders your lungs. It is what renders the ground you walk on.
Okay, but
A war against the environment's own code isn't a rebellion. It's self-erasure.
wait, let me stop you there, because the Phoenix groups aren't asking to turn off the physics engine. They aren't trying to unplug the server. They are asking to turn off the behavioral analytics.
It's all connected, though.
They are fighting the commodification of their lives. It's the difference between a system knowing where my hand is so it can render a coffee cup and the system logging why my hand is trembling so it can sell that emotional data to a higher level entity.
That sounds great in theory. Really, it does. But in a highly complex simulation, the line between rendering a physical state and analyzing a behavioral state is incredibly thin.
Is it, though?
Absolutely. To render a complex human interaction accurately, like the micro-expressions on a face or the exact tone of a voice, the system must process profound amounts of behavioral data. That is exactly why I lean so heavily on the approaches documented by the parallel observers, specifically Senator Vance's advocacy for tech oversight.
Right, the pragmatic legislation argument.
Exactly. Vance acknowledges the extreme complexities at this intersection of technology and ethics. Grassroots abolitionism just screams, shut the servers down. But pragmatic legislation asks the right technical questions.
Such as?
Like, who holds the decryption keys? How long is the behavioral data stored after the moment has been rendered? What are the boundaries of algorithmic intervention? You don't just fight the ocean, you need to build a firewall around the rendering engine.
A firewall.
Yes, allowing the game of life to run smoothly, but mathematically blocking the developer from viewing the player's personal, unaggregated data.
I see why you think building a legislative firewall is the clean, practical solution. But let's look at the actual language being used in Senator Vance's approach. The stated goal is to implement regulations without stifling innovation.
Right. Which is sensible.
That specific phrasing is a deeply dangerous loophole.
How is wanting better technology a loophole?
Because in the context of a simulated reality that is owned and operated by higher-level entities, the architects of the server, prioritizing innovation over human agency privileges the creators over the inhabitants.
I think that's a stretch.
It essentially says that the operational efficiency and the intellectual property of the system are more important than the dignity of the conscious beings trapped inside it. If you rely purely on the Senator Vances of the world, you are trusting the very power structures that allowed this absolute surveillance to exist in the first place.
But
without the uncompromising pressure of the Phoenix groups demanding fundamental digital rights, legislative pragmatism just becomes a rubber stamp for corporate overreach.
okay. But innovation in a simulation isn't just about corporate profit. Innovation means a higher resolution of reality. It means less lag in physical interactions. It means curing simulated diseases by updating the biological code.
At the cost of privacy?
You can't just freeze the environment's development because you're scared of the data required to run it. I don't disagree that public pressure from activists is a powerful catalyst. It is. But the solution cannot be the blind dismantling of the surveillance infrastructure. The solution has to be the legal codification of how that data is governed.
I think where this gets really fascinating is that this philosophical battle over surveillance and reality isn't just happening in legislative chambers or, activist meetings. It is bleeding into the very fabric of everyday culture in ways that are totally unprecedented.
Oh, definitely.
Did you read that piece the Parallel Observer ran about the Chelsea 118 squad?
I did. It's a brilliant look at how this impacts the micro level of society.
It really is. So for those who missed it, these are young athletes, teenagers, who recently pulled off a massive triumph on the pitch. But the reporting highlights how their accomplishments are instantly getting tangled up in these heavy discussions about existence and reality off the field. And I think this completely proves the oppressive weight of this monitored reality.
Why oppressive? They won.
Because they shouldn't have to be grappling with the simulation hypothesis right after winning a championship. Youth sports are supposed to be defined by physical immediacy, by play, by simple bounded rules. Instead, the panopticon is fundamentally altering their relationship with their own achievements.
I think they're handling it better than you're giving them credit for.
Think about the mechanics of what they just learned. If the ball they are kicking is just code, and the algorithm is monitoring their biometric reactions to every goal they score, it steals the soul of the game. How does a kid care about a victory when they know their sweat, their adrenaline, and their joy are literally just data points being rendered by a machine? It proves that algorithmic saturation suffocates human joy.
Wow. That is such a cynical read on what is actually a beautiful story.
Beautiful.
Yes, I look at the exact same story of the Chelsea under-18 squad, and I see a profound testament to human resilience.
You see resilience in kids having an existential crisis over a soccer ball?
I see resilience in the fact that they still played, and they still triumphed. To me, this story proves that a society can hold two seemingly contradictory truths at the exact same time.
Which are?
They can deeply question the fabric of their reality. They can know for a fact that the pitch is monitored code, and yet they can still find genuine experiential meaning within it.
But doesn't the knowledge of the code cheapen the meaning?
Not at all. The algorithm might render the sweat on their foreheads, and it might render the trajectory of the ball, but the algorithm does not render the pride.
That's a nice thought, but...
No, it's true. The pride, the passion, the teamwork, that is generated by the human consciousness experiencing the simulation. A simulated goal, achieved through real effort and real human connection, is still a triumph of the human spirit. The medium doesn't invalidate the meaning.
It definitely complicates it, though. You can't deny that it forces these kids to mature at a rate that is deeply unfair.
It expands their understanding of what life is. Yes, the youth in the Phoenix timeline are highly sensitive to these broader existential themes now, but they aren't collapsing under them. They are integrating them.
Integrating them how?
Well, I think this points directly to what we are going to see in the near future. As public discourse around mental health and these existential questions increases, which is exactly what the Parallel Observer is going to be covering in their upcoming Navigating the Unknown pieces, we're going to see how everyday individuals are managing this.
And you think those personal stories are going to lead to what? Just a peaceful acceptance of the surveillance?
I think those personal stories from the United States and globally will act as a forcing function for the legislature. As citizens publicly navigate this unknown, legislators will be compelled to respond with that precise technical oversight we were talking about. We aren't heading toward the dystopia the Phoenix groups are terrified of.
I wouldn't be so sure.
We are heading toward a shifted societal fabric, one characterized by a healthy, regulated awareness of the simulation.
A regulated awareness sounds an awful lot like a dressed-up term for an accepted cage.
It's an acknowledgement of the parameters of your existence. Every reality has parameters. In our physical world, we are bound by biology, gravity, and thermodynamics, right?
Right.
We don't call gravity a cage, we call it physics. In the Phoenix timeline, their physics are bound by algorithms and processing power. True freedom isn't about breaking the physics engine. It's found in understanding the rules of your reality and maximizing your potential within them, safely through structural governance.
We have unpacked some incredibly dense philosophical and mechanical concepts today, dissecting a reality that really challenges how we define life, liberty, and autonomy. If we look at the core of my perspective, humanity's dignity is inextricably linked to cognitive agency and privacy. The fact that the Phoenix timeline happens to be a simulated environment does not magically negate the moral imperative of those human rights. The grassroots pushback from organizations like the Phoenix groups isn't some naive, technologically incoherent rebellion. It is a necessary fight. If they do not draw a hard line against algorithmic behavioral surveillance, they sacrifice the essence of what makes them human.
And from my perspective, while the existential dread and the anxiety of the population are entirely valid and very real, fighting against the fundamental rendering architecture of a simulated reality just doesn't work.
Right.
True safety for the citizens of the Phoenix timeline is going to come from Senator Vance's model of tech oversight. They have to adapt their societal rules to fit the technical reality of the simulation, implementing firewalls and protective regulations without halting the progress that literally keeps their world rendering.
Yet, even with these totally different technical and philosophical approaches, there is a clear convergence here. We both fully acknowledge that the psychological toll this revelation is taking on the public is massive.
Oh, absolutely.
The anxiety, the dread, the questioning of what is real, those are authentic human experiences that can't just be brushed aside as, transition pains.
Absolutely. We are completely aligned on that. The human cost of this paradigm shift is immense. And I think we also agree that as different sectors adapt, whether we're talking about the labor market pivoting to new simulated economies, or athletes redefining what a victory means on a digital pitch, or legislators trying to draft unprecedented oversight, the very definition of digital rights is fundamentally reshaping the fabric of their society.
It is a complete societal metamorphosis happening in real time, and there's just immense value in examining these existential shifts from both angles. You need the uncompromising human rights perspective that demands agency, and you need the systemic governance perspective that actually understands the operational stability of the servers.
Definitely. And there is clearly so much more we need to uncover. As personal stories continue to emerge, detailing exactly how individuals are navigating these totally uncharted waters, the ongoing coverage from the Parallel Observer is going to be absolutely essential to understanding where this timeline goes next.
Which brings us right back to where we started. That house you live in. You now know the walls are digital glass. You know the architect is logging the data to render the rooms.
Yeah.
The question is no longer whether you are being watched, but what you will demand of the watcher. Can a conscious mind ever truly be free in a world built of code? Or is freedom simply the right to know how your code is written? We leave that for you to decide.